The space station Horizon 7 floated quietly in the darkness of space, its silver walls gleaming under the light of distant stars. Inside, Ho-Jin wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished fixing another broken air filter. Being a space mechanic wasn't the most exciting job, but it kept him busy. "Hey, did you hear about the aliens coming today?" asked Du-Yun, poking his head through the maintenance shaft. His friend's usually neat uniform was covered in grease stains, just like Ho-Jin's. "The Nixians? Yeah, I got the memo," Ho-Jin answered, putting his tools back in their box. Everyone on the station had been talking about it for weeks. The Nixians were known as one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, and this would be their first time studying humans up close. Ho-Jin climbed out of the shaft and stretched his tired muscles. Through the large window nearby, he could see a sleek purple ship approaching the station. It was beautiful, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. Next to it, their human ships looked like children's building blocks. "They say Nixians think we're dangerous," Du-Yun said, watching the ship dock. "Like wild animals or something." Ho-Jin laughed. "Dangerous? We're just mechanics trying to keep this old station running." The station's speakers crackled to life. "All personnel, please note that our Nixian guests have arrived. Remember to follow first contact protocols. Maintain professional distance, and do not approach without invitation." Ho-Jin and Du-Yun walked to the observation deck, joining other curious crew members. Through the reinforced glass, they could see the Nixians entering the station. Their new guests were tall and graceful, with pearl-white skin that seemed to shimmer. Their most striking feature was their large, almond-shaped eyes that changed color like mood rings. Among them was a younger Nixian who caught Ho-Jin's attention. Unlike the others who moved with practiced grace, she seemed more energetic, almost bouncing as she walked. Her eyes shifted between shades of bright purple and blue as she looked around with obvious curiosity. "That's Rai-Su," said Captain Lee, who had appeared beside them. "She's their junior researcher. The older one next to her is Mei-Ray, her mentor." Ho-Jin watched as Rai-Su pulled out a small device and began recording everything she saw. When she turned toward the observation deck, her eyes widened at the sight of the humans. The colors in her eyes swirled rapidly, and she quickly stepped behind Mei-Ray. Mei-Ray's expression hardened as she noticed the humans watching them. She put a protective arm around Rai-Su and guided her away, speaking quietly in their musical language. "Well, that wasn't awkward at all," Du-Yun muttered. "Give them time," Captain Lee said. "They've never worked with humans before. All they know about us comes from old stories and battle reports from the Centauri Wars." Ho-Jin nodded, but couldn't help feeling disappointed. He had hoped the Nixians would be different from other alien species who treated humans like primitive beings who had somehow stumbled into space. Over the next few days, Ho-Jin noticed Rai-Su watching the human crew members from a distance. She would hide behind corners or pretend to study nearby equipment whenever humans passed. Once, he caught her recording him and Du-Yun while they were arm wrestling during their break. The moment she realized he had spotted her, her eyes turned a bright yellow, which Ho-Jin later learned meant embarrassment, and she hurried away. "I think she's afraid of us," Ho-Jin told Du-Yun as they worked on the station's power couplings. "Can you blame her?" Du-Yun replied, handing him a wrench. "Look at you, so scary with your tool belt and safety goggles." Ho-Jin laughed, but he couldn't forget the look of genuine fear he had seen in Rai-Su's eyes. He wished he could show her that humans weren't the monsters she thought they were. But station rules were clear: no approaching the Nixians unless they initiated contact. Little did Ho-Jin know that his chance to change Rai-Su's mind would come sooner than he expected, and in a way none of them could have predicted. From her hidden observation point behind a cargo container, Rai-Su continued to watch the humans, her data pad filling with notes about their aggressive and unpredictable behavior. But sometimes, when no one was looking, her eyes would linger on Ho-Jin, showing swirls of colors that even she didn't quite understand. Rai-Su sat in the Nixian research lab, her eyes glowing a soft green as she reviewed her recordings of the humans. After a week on the station, she had collected many videos of what she considered typical human aggressive behavior. "Look at this, Mi-Ray," she said, showing her mentor a video of Ho-Jin and Du-Yun wrestling in the recreation room. They attack each other even during their rest periods. Mi-Ray watched the video with disapproving eyes. Typical primitive behavior. Notice how they bare their teeth while doing it. But Rai-Su paused the video, tilting her head in confusion. "They're making happy sounds while fighting. I think humans call it laughing. That's what makes them so dangerous," Mi-Ray said firmly. "They find joy in violence. You must be very careful, Rai-Su. Remember what happened to the research team on Station Beta 12. Rai-Su's eyes turned gray with worry. Everyone knew that story. A human had gotten angry and punched a wall so hard he broke his hand. The Nixian researchers had been terrified by this display of uncontrolled rage, not understanding that the human had simply been upset about losing his pet fish. Later that day, Rai-Su watched from her hiding spot as Ho-Jin worked on some machinery. She had chosen him as her primary subject of study because he seemed to be a typical example of his species, strong, always carrying tools, which she classified as potential weapons, and frequently engaging in physical contact with others. Ho-Jin was trying to fix a stuck valve, his muscles straining as he turned a large wrench. To Rai-Su's horror, he began making angry sounds and speaking in his language. "Come on, you stupid thing," Ho-Jin muttered, giving the valve another turn. Rai-Su quickly noted in her data pad. Subject shows aggression toward inanimate objects. Possibly sees everything as potential enemy. Just then, Du-Yun arrived with some food. "Brought you lunch, you workaholic." Rai-Su watched in fascination as the two humans sat down right there on the floor to eat. They shared their food, talking and making those laughing sounds again. She couldn't understand why they would sit on the cold floor when there were proper eating areas available. "Your research seems to be going well," a voice behind her said, making Rai-Su jump. It was Captain Lee, who somehow always knew where everyone was on his station. "Oh, yes. I am studying human behavior patterns," Rai-Su said in careful English, her eyes turning yellow with embarrassment at being caught spying. "And what have you learned about us so far?" the captain asked kindly. Rai-Su looked at her notes. "Humans are very physical. They fight often, but seem to enjoy it. They ignore proper protocols about eating locations. They talk loudly and show their teeth a lot." Captain Lee tried not to smile. "Those two aren't fighting. They're playing. And showing teeth, smiling, is how we show friendship." "Friendship?" Rai-Su's eyes swirled with confusion. "But they hit each other's backs and arms." "That's just how some humans show affection," the captain explained. "Like how your eyes change color to show emotions. We use touch to communicate." This was not what Rai-Su had expected to hear. It went against everything in the Nixian cultural database about humans. She looked back at Ho-Jin and Du-Yun, who were now throwing bits of food into each other's mouths and cheering when they caught them. "Would you like to join them?" Captain Lee asked. Rai-Su's eyes turned almost white with fear. "Oh no, that would not be safe. Mi-Ray says we must maintain proper distance from humans." The captain nodded understandingly. "Well, if you ever change your mind, those two are probably the friendliest mechanics on this station." After the captain left, Rai-Su continued her observations, but now she felt confused. She watched as Ho-Jin helped a young crew member who had dropped their tools, his movements gentle despite his strength. She saw him carefully fix a small plant in the hydroponics bay that had been growing crooked. These actions didn't match her research about humans being constantly aggressive. As she wrote her daily report, Rai-Su found herself struggling to make her observations fit the standard Nixian view of humans. That night, as she lay in her quarters, her eyes glowed with a new color, one that Nixians rarely showed, curiosity mixed with doubt. Perhaps there was more to these humans than she had been taught to believe. The normal quiet of Space Station Horizon 7 was broken by a loud alarm. Red lights flashed through the corridors as Captain Lee's voice came over the speakers. "Attention all personnel. We have received an emergency distress signal from mining station KR-32. They have reported a serious radiation leak. All emergency response teams report to the main briefing room immediately." He-Jin was already running to the briefing room when Du-Yan caught up with him. Both of them knew KR-32. They had helped install new equipment there just 3 months ago. "I heard it's bad," Du-Yan said as they ran. "The mining station's radiation shields are failing." When they reached the briefing room, it was already full of crew members. Captain Lee stood at the front, his face serious as he looked at a holographic map of the mining station. "The situation is critical," the captain said. KR-32's main reactor is leaking radiation. They have 28 miners trapped inside, and their protective suits won't last more than 6 hours. From her place at the back of the room, Rai-Su watched with growing concern. She had never seen the humans so quiet and serious. Even He-Jin wasn't smiling now. "We need volunteers for a rescue mission," Captain Lee continued. "I won't lie. This will be dangerous. The radiation levels are already higher than safety limits." Without hesitation, He-Jin stood up. "I'll go, Captain. I know that station's systems." "Count me in too," Du-Yan said, standing beside his friend. One by one, more humans stood up to volunteer. Rai-Su's eyes turned deep blue with surprise. According to her research, humans were supposed to think only about themselves in dangerous situations. But here they were, offering to risk their lives for others. The Nixian research team sat in their own corner, speaking quietly in their language. "This is exactly why we don't interfere in human matters," Mayray said. "They'd rush into danger without proper analysis. We should return to our ship until this crisis is over." Rai-Su watched as He-Jin and the other volunteers gathered around a table, planning their rescue. They worked quickly but carefully, checking equipment and discussing the best way to reach the trapped miners. "The main reactor room will be the most dangerous," He-Jin said, pointing to the map. "We'll need special suits to handle those radiation levels. The suits will only give us 30 minutes of safe exposure," another crew member added. "After that, the radiation will start to get through." Du-Yan smiled at his friend. "Then we'll just have to be quick, won't we?" Rai-Su found herself moving closer to hear better. She had never seen humans plan something so carefully. They weren't being aggressive or rushing in blindly. They were being smart and organized. Captain Lee noticed her interest. "Would the Nixian team like to assist with the rescue operation? Your advanced technology could be very helpful." Before Rai-Su could speak, Mayray stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Captain, but Nixian safety protocols forbid us from participating in such high-risk operations. We cannot help." He-Jin looked up from his preparation, meeting Rai-Su's eyes for a moment. She was surprised to see no anger or judgment in his face, just understanding, and maybe a little sadness. As the rescue team finished their preparations, Rai-Su watched He-Jin put on his protective suit. Her datapad was in her hand, but she wasn't taking notes anymore. Something felt wrong about treating this like just another research observation. "Be careful out there," Captain Lee told the rescue team. "You have 6 hours to get those miners out. After that, the radiation levels will be too high for any rescue attempt." He-Jin checked his suit one last time and looked at the captain. "We'll get them out, sir. No one gets left behind." As the rescue team headed for their ship, Rai-Su's eyes showed a color she had never felt before. A mix of worry and admiration. These humans were about to risk their lives to save others, breaking every rule in her research about human behavior. What she didn't know was that very soon, she would need their help too. And her whole understanding of humans was about to change forever. Rai-Su sat in the Nixian research lab, trying to focus on her work. But her eyes kept turning toward the window, where she could see the rescue ship preparing to leave. Something was bothering her, but she couldn't figure out what it was. She opened her datapad and began checking through her notes from the past few days. As she read, she noticed something strange. There was a gap in her records of Mayre's activities yesterday. "Computer," she said quietly, "show me Mayre's station access logs for the past 48 hours." The computer displayed a list of times and locations. Raisu's eyes turned gray with worry as she saw something that made her heart beat faster. According to the logs, Mayre had taken a small research shuttle to mining station Kara 32 early yesterday morning. That can't be right, Raisu whispered to herself. She checked again. The log was clear. Mayre had gone to collect mineral samples from the mining station. She was supposed to return last night, but there was no record of her coming back. Raisu's hands shook as she realized what this meant. Mayre was still on Kara 32. Her mentor was trapped on the station with the radiation leak. "Computer, contact Research Shuttle NK7, Raisu said urgently. After a long moment, the computer responded, unable to establish connection. Communication systems on NK7 are not responding. Raisu ran to the Nixian team's quarters, but Mayre's room was empty. On the desk, she found a research plan showing that Mayre had gone to study some rare crystals that the humans had discovered in the mine. Why didn't she tell anyone? Raisu wondered aloud, but she knew the answer. Mayre was too proud to admit she had broken Nixian protocols by going alone. Now she was in danger, and her pride was still keeping her from calling for help. Through the window, Raisu could see Hejin and the rescue team doing their final checks. They were about to leave, but they didn't know Mayre was there. They would be focusing their search on the areas where the miners were trapped. Raisu paced the room, her eyes changing colors rapidly as different emotions fought inside her. Nixian rules said she should not interfere with human operations. She should wait for the Nixian emergency response team to arrive from their homeworld. But that would take 3 days. The humans had said there were only 6 hours before the radiation became too dangerous. She looked at her datapad again, reading her notes about humans being dangerous and unpredictable. Then she remembered how quickly they had volunteered to help strangers, how carefully they had planned the rescue, how Hejin had looked at her without anger when the Nixians refused to help. "Computer, where was Mayre's last known location on Kara 32? She asked. "Research Shuttle NK7, docked at Laboratory Section B, Level 3. That was on the opposite side of the station from where the miners were trapped. The rescue team wouldn't know to look there." Raisu's eyes finally settled on a deep purple color, the color of decision. She stood up and walked quickly toward the launch bay where the rescue team was preparing to leave. Her steps slowed as she got closer. All her training told her that approaching humans during a crisis was dangerous. They might become aggressive under stress. They might ignore her. They might even blame her for not telling them sooner. Through the launch bay window, she saw Hejin checking his radiation suit one last time. He looked focused but calm, not at all like the dangerous creature she had described in her research notes. Raisu took a deep breath and pressed the button to open the launch bay door. As she stepped inside, all the humans turned to look at her. Her eyes turned yellow with nervousness, but she forced herself to speak. "Please," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I need your help. Someone else is trapped on that station." The launch bay went quiet as Raisu stood before the rescue team. Her eyes were shifting between yellow fear and purple determination as she looked at the surprised humans. Hejin stepped forward, still holding his helmet. "Who's trapped there?" "Mayre," Raisu said, her voice getting stronger. "She went to collect crystal samples yesterday. She's in Laboratory Section B, Level 3. At least, that's where she was last known to be." Instead of the anger or blame she expected, Hejin immediately turned to Captain Lee. "Sir, we need to adjust our rescue plan. Laboratory Section B is on the opposite side of the station from the miners." The captain looked at the map. "That section will be heavily affected by the radiation leak. The levels there might already be too high. Then we need to move fast, He-Jin said. He turned back to Rai-Su. Why didn't Mira call for help? Rai-Su's eyes turned a deep blue, the color of shame. We Nixians don't like to admit mistakes. Going alone to collect samples was against our protocols. She probably thought she could get out by herself. Do-Yun checked his radiation meter. Those crystals she was studying, were they in the sealed containers we provided? No, Rai-Su said. She brought special Nixian containers. She said human technology wasn't good enough. The humans didn't react with offense to this statement. Instead, they looked more worried. Those containers, He-Jin said carefully, they wouldn't happen to be made with ceruleum metal, would they? Rai-Su's eyes went wide. Yes. How did you know? Because ceruleum reacts badly with the type of radiation from the station's reactor, He-Jin explained. It could make the radiation spread faster. Captain Lee quickly pressed some buttons on the control panel. New readings from the station show radiation levels are rising faster than we expected. This explains why. Rai-Su felt her legs go weak. Not only was Mirai trapped, but her special containers were making things worse. She had put both herself and the miners in more danger. To her surprise, He-Jin put a gentle hand on her shoulder. Hey, it's okay. We'll find her. Do you have any way to contact her? No, Rai-Su said. Her shuttle's communication system isn't responding. But she pulled out her datapad. All Nixian researchers wear tracking devices. If I can get close enough to the station, I might be able to locate her exact position. Do-Yun grinned. That would save us a lot of time searching. I'm coming with you, Rai-Su said, trying to sound brave despite her eyes flashing with fear colors. The humans all looked at her in surprise. He-Jin shook his head. It's too dangerous. The radiation levels. I know more about Nixian technology than you do, Rai-Su interrupted. And I need to help fix this mistake. He-Jin and Captain Lee shared a look. The captain nodded slowly. Okay, He-Jin said, but you follow our safety rules exactly. No going off alone, no taking off your suit, no heroics. Promise. Rai-Su's eyes turned a new color, one she had never shown before. It was a mix of gratitude and trust. I promise. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The humans helped Rai-Su into a radiation suit, carefully explaining how everything worked. She was surprised by how patient they were, even though time was running out. As they boarded the rescue ship, Do-Yun looked at He-Jin with a small smile. So much for maintaining proper distance from the Nixians, huh? He-Jin checked Rai-Su's suit one last time. Sometimes rules need to be broken to do the right thing. Rai-Su thought about all her notes about humans being dangerous and unpredictable. She had been right about the unpredictable part, but not in the way she had expected. These humans had dropped everything to help someone who had openly distrusted them. As the rescue ship's engines started up, Rai-Su made a silent promise to herself. If they succeeded in this mission, she would write a completely new report about humans. One that told the truth about their real nature. The rescue ship docked with mining station KR-32 with a soft thud. Through the thick windows, Rai-Su could see the emergency lights flashing in the station's corridors. Her tracking device was already beeping, showing Mirai's location. Everyone check your radiation suits one last time, He-Jin said, his voice calm but serious. Remember, we have 30 minutes before the radiation starts to get through. Rai-Su watched as the humans went through their safety checks with careful attention. There was no rushing, no shouting, no chaos, just smooth, practiced movements. Mirai is in the crystal storage room, she said, showing them her tracker. It's down that corridor. He-Jin nodded. Do-Yun, take Team 2 and head for the miners. We'll get Mirai. As they stepped into the station, their radiation meters started clicking rapidly. The sound made Rai-Su's eyes turn gray with fear. Stay close to me, He-Jin said to her. The radiation is affecting the station's power. Some doors might be stuck. They moved through the dark corridors, their suit lights casting long shadows. The clicking of the radiation meters got louder as they went deeper into the station. "Wait," He-Jin said suddenly, holding up his hand. Ahead of them, a section of the ceiling had collapsed. Sparks flew from broken wires. Raisu's tracker beeped more urgently. "Meirei is just past this. We have to find another way." "There is no other way," He-Jin said, studying the damage. "But we can climb through. It's risky, but possible." He turned to Raisu. "You don't have to come. I can follow the tracker's signal." Raisu looked at the dangerous path ahead. All her Nixian training told her to stay back, to be safe. But she remembered how quickly these humans had agreed to help Meirei. "I'm coming," she said firmly, her eyes glowing with determination. He-Jin smiled behind his helmet and started clearing a path through the debris. He moved carefully but quickly, testing each step before taking it. They had almost made it through when Raisu's foot slipped. She started to fall, but He-Jin caught her arm, holding her steady until she found her balance. "Thank you," she said, surprised by how gentle his grip had been despite his strength. Beyond the collapsed section, they found the crystal storage room. The door was jammed halfway open, and Raisu's tracker was beeping frantically. "Meirei," she called out. "Are you in there?" A weak voice answered in Nixian language. He-Jin didn't understand the words, but Raisu's eyes lit up with relief. "She's alive," Raisu said, "but she says she's trapped under some fallen equipment." He-Jin squeezed through the half-open door. In the beam of his suit light, they saw Meirei lying on the floor. A heavy storage unit had fallen across her legs, and her face showed pain. When Meirei saw He-Jin, her eyes turned white with fear. She said something quickly in Nixian. "She says to stay back," Raisu translated. "She thinks it's too dangerous for a human to help her." He-Jin ignored this, already examining the fallen storage unit. "Ask her if she can feel her legs." After Raisu translated, Meirei nodded. "Good," He-Jin said. "That means nothing's cut off blood flow. But we need to move fast. The radiation levels are rising." He positioned himself carefully beside the storage unit. "Raisu, when I lift this, help her pull free." "Ready?" Meirei started to protest, but stopped when she saw the radiation meters reading. Her eyes changed to show acceptance. He-Jin braced himself and lifted. The storage unit was heavy, but he raised it just enough. Raisu helped Meirei slide out, and they were free. But as they turned to leave, their radiation meters started screaming. The levels were rising too fast. "We have 10 minutes," He-Jin said, checking his suit gauge. "Can you walk?" he asked Meirei through Raisu. Meirei tried to stand but collapsed in pain. Without hesitation, He-Jin picked her up carefully. "Lead the way," he told Raisu. "We're getting out of here together." As they hurried back through the damaged corridor, Raisu noticed something extraordinary. Meirei's eyes, which had always shown fear or distrust around humans, were now showing a new color, one that meant respect. Time was running out as the Jin carried Meirei through the dark corridors of the mining station. Raisu led the way, her suit light showing their path back to the rescue ship. Their radiation meters kept beeping faster and louder with each step. How are the miners?" Raisu asked between breaths as they hurried along. "Du Yan just radioed in," He-Jin said, his voice steady despite carrying Meirei. "They got everyone out. They're already heading back to their ship." Suddenly, the lights in the corridor went completely dark. The station's power was failing. They could only see by their suit lights now. "We're close," Raisu said, checking her map. "Just 2 more turns." Behind them, they heard the sound of metal groaning. The radiation was affecting the station's structure. Walls were beginning to bend and crack. "Faster," He-Jin said calmly. "But be careful. The floor might be unstable." Mayray said something in Nixian. Her eyes were showing swirls of pain and worry. She says you should leave her, Raisu translated. The radiation levels are too high. Hajin adjusted his grip on Mirai, making sure she was secure. Tell her that's not how we do things. Nobody gets left behind, remember. As Raisu translated this, she saw Mirai's eyes change color in surprise. The senior researcher had always taught that humans were selfish creatures. But here was one, risking his life to save someone who had openly distrusted his kind. They finally reached the airlock where their rescue ship was docked. As the door sealed behind them, they all checked their radiation exposure meters. We made it just in time, Heijin said, carefully setting Mirai down on a medical bed. Any longer, and our suits would have failed. The rescue ship quickly undocked from the mining station. Through the window, they could see the other rescue team's ship already heading back to Horizon 7 with the miners. Once they were safely away, Raisu helped Mirai out of her damaged suit while Heijin got the ship's medical equipment ready. To her surprise, he knew how to adjust it for Nixian biology. You know about Nixian medical care? Raisu asked, her eyes showing curious colors. Heijin nodded as he worked. I studied it after your team arrived at the station. Thought it might be useful to know, just in case. Mirai, who was now receiving treatment for her injuries, watched Heijin with new interest. She said something to Raisu in their language. She wants to know why you learned about Nixian medicine when we weren't even willing to talk to humans. Raisu translated. Heijin smiled as he checked Mirai's vital signs. Because good neighbors help each other, even if they're different. That's what my grandmother always said. When they finally docked back at Horizon 7, they found Captain Lee and the medical team waiting. The miners from the other rescue ship were already being treated, and everyone was relieved to see Mirai alive. As the medical team took over Mirai's care, Raisu watched Heijin step back and start removing his radiation suit. He looked tired but satisfied. I need to update my research, Raisu said, her eyes showing a mix of colors Heijin had never seen before. Everything I wrote about humans, it was wrong. Not wrong, Heijin said kindly. Just incomplete. You saw what you expected to see at first. That's normal. What matters is that you were willing to change your mind when you saw more. Captain Lee came over to check on them. Good work, everyone. The miners are all safe, and the station's reactor has been remotely shut down. The radiation leak is contained. Raisu's datapad was in her hand, but instead of taking notes, she turned it off. I don't need to record this, she said. I will remember how humans really are. Not from watching from far away, but from seeing their hearts up close. From her medical bed, Mirai watched this conversation. For the first time since arriving at the station, her eyes showed the color of wisdom, the rare shade that Nixians only displayed when they realized they had been wrong about something important. A week after the rescue, life on Horizon 7 had changed in unexpected ways. The once empty space between the human and Nixian sections of the station was now full of activity. And at the center of it all was Raisu. She sat in the station's common area, surrounded by both humans and Nixians. Her datapad was open, but instead of taking notes about human behavior, she was teaching Heijin and Duyan about Nixian eye colors. So when our eyes turn this shade of green, she explained, changing her eye color to demonstrate, it means we're happy and relaxed. Like when humans smile. Duyan asked, watching with interest. Yes, exactly. Raisu's eyes sparkled with excitement. And when we're curious, they turn this color. Her eyes shifted to a bright copper shade. Heijin watched the color change with fascination. You know, I always wondered why your eyes turned yellow whenever we were fixing equipment near your lab. Raisu's eyes turned that very yellow color, showing embarrassment. That was when I still thought you might suddenly become violent. I was nervous every time you picked up a tool. They all laughed at this, even Mirai, who was sitting nearby. Her legs were still healing, but she had started joining these cultural exchange sessions. Today, she was teaching a young human engineer about Nixian technology. "Your tools are actually quite clever," Mayray admitted to the engineer. "Simple, but effective. Like your people." Her eyes showed the blue-green color of respect as she said this. Captain Lee walked through the common area, smiling at the sight. The station's atmosphere had completely changed. Where there had once been fear and separation, there was now curiosity and friendship. Later that day, Hejin was showing Raisu the station's engine room. She had asked to learn about human engineering, saying it was surprisingly practical. "This is how we control the power flow," he explained, pointing to a panel of switches. "Not as advanced as your systems, but it works perfectly," Raisu finished. "And if something breaks, you can fix it with basic tools. Our systems are more efficient, but when they break, we usually have to replace the whole unit." Heijin nodded. Different approaches, both with their own good points. Raisu's eyes turned thoughtful purple. "That's what I'm writing about in my new report. How humans and Nixians can learn from each other." She showed him her datapad. Instead of her old notes about human aggression, there were now detailed observations about human creativity, problem-solving, and compassion. "The rescue changed everything," she said. "Not just saving Mayray, but how you did it. You were brave but careful, strong but gentle. Nothing like what our old reports said about humans." Other Nixian researchers had noticed the changes too. They had started their own observations, but this time they were talking with humans instead of hiding from them. Some had even started learning human games like chess, fascinated by how it combined strategy with friendly competition. In the medical bay, Mireille was finally ready to walk without help. She had insisted that Hejin be there, along with Raisu. "I was wrong about humans," Mary said in careful English, her eyes showing humble blue. "You saved my life, even after I refused to help with the miners. I will not forget that." Hejin helped her take her first steps. That's what neighbors do. Later that evening, Raisu found Hejin in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. She sat next to him, her eyes showing comfortable green. "The Nixian Science Council wants to establish a permanent cultural exchange program," she said. "They're very interested in my new reports about humans." "Good reports, I hope?" Hejin asked with a smile. Raisu's eyes sparkled with happy colors. "The best. I wrote about how humans taught me the most important lesson, that you can't understand someone by watching from far away. You have to be brave enough to come close." As they watched the stars together, Raisu realized that her eyes were showing a color she had never felt before. It was the color Nixians showed when they had found something precious, something they wanted to protect and nurture. Like a bridge between two worlds that were always meant to meet. 3 months after the rescue, the main hall of Horizon 7 was filled with both humans and Nixians. The Nixian Science Council had sent their representatives to hear Raisu's presentation about her research on humans. Hejin sat in the front row, watching proudly as Raisu prepared to speak. "Distinguished council members," Raisu began, her eyes showing confident blue. "When I first came to this station, I thought I knew what humans were like. I was wrong." She showed images from her early notes, including her recordings of Hejin and Duyun fighting in the recreation room. The audience laughed when she explained how she had misunderstood their playful wrestling. "But everything changed during the mining station crisis," she continued. "When we needed help, the humans didn't hesitate. They didn't ask what we could give them in return. They didn't even mention how we had refused to help their miners." Mayray, now fully recovered, nodded from her seat. Her eyes showed the truth-telling color as Raisu spoke. "I watched Hejin carry Mayray through dangerous radiation, even when she told him to leave her behind. I saw humans risk their lives to save others without thinking twice. And most importantly, I learned that you cannot understand a species by watching from a distance." Raisu showed new images, humans and Nixians working together in the station, sharing meals, teaching each other games and skills. "Humans are not the dangerous creatures we thought they were," she said. "Yes, they can be strong, but they use their strength to protect others. Yes, they can be fierce, but their fierceness comes from caring deeply. They are complex, just like us. The council member's eyes showed interested colors as Raisu continued. She explained how humans had learned to adjust their equipment for Nixian biology, how they had studied Nixian culture, and how they had always been ready to help. Therefore, she said, I propose something unprecedented. I want to establish the first official human Nixian cultural exchange program, not just for scientists and researchers, but for everyone who wants to learn about each other. The council members talked among themselves, their eyes showing thoughtful colors. Finally, the head council member stood up. Your research is most interesting, young Raisu, she said. But surely one incident is not enough to change centuries of careful distance from humans. He-Jin stood up then. He walked to the front and stood beside Raisu. Respected council, he said in carefully practiced Nixian language, his pronunciation perfect. Everyone's eyes widened in surprise, especially Raisu's, who hadn't known he was learning her language. We humans have a saying, He-Jin continued. Actions speak louder than words, so let me show you something. He activated the station's communication screen. It showed live feeds from other human stations across space. In each one, humans and Nixians were working together, sharing knowledge, helping each other. While you've been listening to Raisu's presentation, He-Jin explained, similar meetings have been happening on 20 other stations, all because one brave Nixian researcher decided to trust a human during a crisis. The council members' eyes showed amazed colors as they watched the feeds. The head council member turned to Raisu. It seems, she said, her eyes showing the rare wisdom color, that we have much to learn from humans. And perhaps they have things to learn from us as well. The cultural exchange program was approved unanimously. As the council members left to prepare the official documents, Raisu turned to He-Jin. You learned our language, she asked, her eyes showing touched colors. Well, He-Jin smiled. You learned to trust humans. Learning your language seemed like a fair exchange. Raisu's eyes showed that special color again, the one that meant finding something precious. But this time, she understood exactly what it meant. Captain Lee watched from the back of the hall as his station became the official center for human-Nixian relations. He smiled, remembering how it all started with one fierce human and one curious alien who were brave enough to break the rules. Sometimes, he thought, the fiercest things humans do is simply showing kindness when others expect fear. And sometimes, the bravest thing anyone can do, human or alien, is to change their mind about those they once feared.